Beyond Redemption, The Crimes of Yang Xinhai. Welcome to The Most Evil, where we delve into the minds of history's most notorious serial killers. Join us as we explore the dark and unsettling deeds of this mysterious individual and the long-lasting effects he had on society, as we dig into the terrifying story of Yang Xinhai, an infamous Chinese serial killer known as the Monster Killer. Born in Zhengyang County, Henan Province, China, on July 29, 1968, Yang Xinhai was raised in impoverished conditions, surrounded by the hard realities of rural existence. With his family struggling to make ends meet, Yang personally seen the consequences of social exclusion and economic hardship. Yang was also mistreated by his father, who was an alcoholic, which made his already difficult childhood even worse. These early encounters had a significant influence on Yang, influencing his perspective on the world and his long-term psychological growth. When Yang reached maturity, his violent and evil impulses combined with his unhappy past to create a reign of terror that terrified Chinese communities all over the country. Yang Xinhai began a reign of evil in 1999 and 2003 that rocked China to its foundation. He admitted to committing 23 rapes and an astounding 67 murders, all of which targeted victims in various provinces. Men, women, and kids of various ages were among Yang's victims. There was no consistent pattern or reason other than his unquenchable thirst for blood. Yang Xinhai's methodology as a serial killer was characterized by a ruthless and calculated approach to violence, rooted in his deep-seated psychological disturbances and a desire for power and control. His choice of victims was indiscriminate, targeting individuals of all ages and backgrounds. He preyed upon vulnerable communities, often selecting victims who lived in remote or isolated areas where he could carry out his crimes without detection. Yang's victims were typically chosen at random, with no discernible pattern or motive other than his own twisted desire to kill. His method of attack was brutal and savage, characterized by extreme violence and cruelty. He would often break into the homes of his victims under the cover of darkness, wielding weapons such as hammers, axes, and knives. Once inside, he would launch frenzied attacks on his unsuspecting victims, inflicting fatal injuries before fleeing the scene. Despite the heinous nature of his crimes, Yang managed to evade detection for several years, eluding law enforcement and leaving investigators baffled. He took care to cover his tracks, leaving behind minimal evidence and avoiding any direct connection to his victims. Yang's ability to blend into the community and avoid suspicion contributed to the difficulty of apprehending him. One of the key elements of Yang's methodology was his mobility across different provinces in China. By constantly moving from one location to another, he made it difficult for authorities to establish patterns or link his crimes to a single perpetrator. This geographical mobility allowed Yang to evade capture for an extended period, prolonging the agony of communities living in fear of his next attack. Thousands of law enforcement officers from several jurisdictions participated in the extensive investigation into Yang Xinhai's offenses. Authorities encountered tremendous difficulties in assembling the evidence and identifying possible suspects as they attempted to appreciate the breadth and depth of Yang's atrocities. But with persistent detective work and forensic examination, police were able to piece together the terrifying reality of the monster killer's spree. Yang Xinhai's capture signaled the end of a horrifying period in Chinese history and provided comfort to people living in terror and uncertainty. Yang's reign of terror came to an abrupt end in November 2003, when he was ultimately captured by police enforcement in Anhui Province, China, despite his best efforts to avoid detection. The case made significant progress because of the hard work of the police and the cooperation of several law enforcement organizations. For several months, investigators had been closely monitoring Yang's whereabouts and probing his offenses in order to compile evidence and establish a case against him. Police officers arrived at Yang's location on the day of his capture, arrested him without any problems, and put an end to his killing rampage. The neighborhood was rocked by the news of Yang's arrest as people struggled to accept that the guy who had caused so much agony and death had been living among them. Yang admitted to the horrific killings of numerous people during his interrogation, spilling horrifying information about his crimes and the reasons behind them. His admission of guilt was beyond dispute, especially in light of the extensive evidence that had been gathered against him. Yang Xinhai was found guilty of many murder charges in 2004 and given the death penalty. The relatives of his victims felt some closure after his apprehension and prosecution, and a measure of justice was served for the lives he had taken. Deep-seated concerns about the essence of evil and the extent of human depravity are brought up by the Yang Xinhai case. Scholars have endeavored to examine Yang's mental state, conjecturing regarding the fundamental incentives and psychological elements that propelled him to carry out such egregious deeds. Yang left a traumatizing and terrifying legacy that still affects the families of his victims as well as the towns he terrorized. After learning more about Yang Xinhai's life and actions, we are left with a sobering reminder of the evil that may exist inside the human soul. Yang's story serves as a warning about the dangers of uncontrolled violence and the necessity of maintaining vigilance against the possibility of evil lurking among us. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more content on true crime and psychological analysis. Remember to stay vigilant, and until next time, stay safe.